Do you agree that executives' personal branding matters for the business growth?
You very quickly realize that your network is your network. That personal brand within that network, how incredibly important that is. When you need to build that brand up from the ground in a new territory, it's extremely difficult. You need to create that for yourself and be a trusted advisor on the board and a trusted leader for the team and a trusted brand for your customers. It's a lot of trust that goes into that personal brand.
How then marketing leaders should look at their marketing strategies today and what changes need to happen in those strategies?
When we have a look at that customer behavior and we start planning on how we're going to engage that, this is very dependent on your industry. 75% of marketers are not happy with their tech stack. So we're looking at 79% of senior leaders, marketers in their business that are not happy with their tech stack. They're focusing on that. There's so much happening there. But to remove yourself and look inward,
What would you look at those top 3 priorities?
I would probably go with personalization, time to value, and I would probably go with channel mix. So I'd say those 3 things would probably be the first ones I go to. And I say those with a very wide kind of hitting industry and sector kind of arrows. So if I had to shoot an arrow directly to it, I'd fall there first.
What do you think, like how CMO role is evolving, like compared to 5 years ago versus today? And then in 2 years from now, where do you see CMO role is adjusting and how they should rediscover their role?
Let's talk about the CMO role 5 years ago.
Recognized as one of South Africa's top 20 CMOs to watch, Jarryd McDonald is driven by high standards and tight execution. He leads with mantra, set direction, decide with clarity, launch with precision, and keep raising the bar. Jarryd is the founder and CMO of Culture Cartel, known for his disruptive approach to brand building. With a career spanning creative leadership and executive marketing roles, he has delivered award-winning campaigns across industries and markets worldwide. As a member of CMO Council's advisory board, Jarryd brings a unique blend of cultural insights, digital innovation, and business strategy to redefine the role of today's CMO.
Back then, I was a CMO for it was a multinational company, importer distributor, and that was all about channel mastery and performance ops. And 5 years later, right now, it's a completely different landscape. If we had a look at CMOs in 5 years' time, I think those timelines are also going to be shifting down, and customers are going to be making more informed decisions quicker. And we really need to be reactive to that.
Hi Jarryd, welcome to the show.
I know, great to be here.
Awesome. We tried for a little bit. Finally, we are here and really appreciate your time today.
It's such a pleasure, man.
We're going to talk about from your executive experience, your leadership, like what can executives learn about scaling today? We are shaping the industry these days through AI vision, through a lot of government regulatory changes happening, import and export and international trade. How can it shape leaders into business leadership, especially from scaling perspective? Right? A lot of entrepreneurs are struggling to break that plateau of being busy and keep the lights on. But scaling is important too in order to show the business growth to investors, to customers, and to employees and to shareholders. So what do you think? Like how can leaders run the business for scaling?
I think the most dangerous thing any executive can ever say is that we've always done it this way. We've been doing it this way for years and it works. And I think that's extremely dangerous for executives to say. You know, the landscape is changing every single day and things change on the fly. And you need to be so adaptive to market changes and customer changes that one really needs to have a look at scaling and not just do things the same. I think when it comes to scaling brands, 2 things are very important. I think scaling too quickly can absolutely ruin a business. Do you know that most businesses actually actually fold on the scale up, especially small businesses, fold on their upward trajectory versus that of a downward slope. So scaling is super important, and being able to, let's use a example of a multi-brand environment. I personally have had experience in a multinational importer distributor. We had a portfolio of 19 brands, and with all of these, we had this huge portfolio, and we had to scale these brands with the evolving needs of the customer and the business itself. And I think the best way to explain how we did this is we took every single brand as its own personal portfolio, and we built a revenue hypothesis. We gained real-time customer signals, and we did test cost analysis on how we're going to actually scale these brands within their respective markets. And we did this at scale in volume to actually put those brands on an upward trajectory.
Scaling is not linear, right? So it's
Yeah,
always up and down in terms of market conditions change, your internal culture kept changing, especially as you mentioned, like small scale business. Small scale business
yeah,
is more ad hoc, I would say. Maybe it's not a perfect word to justify the small business, but it's like more less on process, less on governance, but more on execution focused. And there are a lot of failures. There are more experiments going on in those kind of businesses. In order to scale, there are a lot of moving factors that are required to take into consideration to keep the vision and goal set on the growth. So that like
that's exactly right. Yeah,
right. So, especially like learn from lessons. Okay. Um,
yeah.
like you as you are running experiments, as you are doing a lot of things for the first time, keep your logs, what works, what's not in your business.
Absolutely. My previous CEO said, make mistakes, make loads of mistakes. Just don't make them a second time.
That way, mistakes are not bad, really.
Yeah.
There should. I was talking to some other guest in my podcast, and she clearly mentioned like leaders should give an authority to their staff to make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? Learn from it. Like, and there is an accepted term in industry these days called experimentation.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
it's been widely accepted. Companies like Google, Facebook, large organizations, they run experiments all the time on their digital
Yeah.
property, right?
Yeah.
A/B testing and sampling experience, like show the new feature to little bit of audience and see how they respond. And sometimes feature don't work, right? So that's why experimentation is important. And
Agree.
leaders should give an authority and flexibility and make failure a normal acceptable thing also in the culture, right? So employees
That's
can think about empowerment and they feel accepted on that side as well, right?
that's exactly right. And another important thing is the faster you fail, the faster you learn.
Exactly, and then you grow and scale faster.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
ultimately fail as fast as you can, as many times as you can, but learn from those failings. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. With respect to marketing, like marketing is all about building market perception, your brand
Yeah.
perception with your customers, not just
Yeah. Yeah.
externally, but also with investors, with your employees.
Yeah.
It's all about brand perception. Like you think about a brand, first thing you think about either quality, either colors, either their speed or their success
That's
or
right.
whatever.
Their price points, their value. Absolutely.
Yeah, how others see about the very first value of the brand, right? And that's the job of marketing, really,
Yeah.
right? Of course, I mean there are other leaders, but primarily marketing. Okay,
Yeah. That's right.
in that way, how marketing leaders, let's talk about CMOs, bridge between CFO and CEO, because you have to take care of your profit and loss statement. You have to build your pipeline for sales. You have to keep spreading brand awareness in the market and still having the prospects and customers engaging to your business. How, in order to keep that balance, in order to market shift happening these days, in order to regulatory changes we just talked about, how CMO role is evolving these days. Of course, there are changes.
Yeah, there are. I position the CMO role as a CRO role for demand generation. You've got to translate a brand into a pipeline where math and cash conversion come into place. And it's really got to, one needs to look at that. One needs to look at or take into consideration margins and paybacks, working media for the CFO. There are so many different factors of this where the CMO role is now leaning towards not only CRO, but also a CTO. I mean, more and more, we're kind of leaning towards that tech aspect versus not only revenue or innovation, CIOs for that matter. So I think there are a lot of different factors that almost translate the CMO role within that CFO CEO bridging structure.
What should CMOs focus on in that way? What is the top priority right now? Like when AI and technology shift is happening and employees are not. I have read it in a study like 79% of CMOs are not confident about the return on their investment on digital technologies. And today, digital technology is the main pillar of any business, not just marketing, but all processes,
Yeah.
all departments, right? Digital is like number one to go platform. 79% of CMOs are not confident about that investment. Like the return is valid or accurate. Do you think CMOs should change their perspective, how their tech stack is being used, and how the services should be added to the tech stack, like how the ROI of tech stack should be measured in that way? Like any opinion on that?
Yeah. So let's have a look at Canada as an example. If we have a look at where marketing spend is in Canada in 2025, we're looking at 75% of marketing budget is being spent on digital channels. That is a phenomenal amount.
Yeah.
So I think the organizational structures are fluid. For example, Hyundai split the CMO role to remit into creative and performance. Those are two very different aspects of brand that are now being pushed from two different angles. And in many cases, that makes sense. So I think the best way to answer that question is that the CMO role is in fact fluid. And you've got to really focus on the future growth of the business. That tech stack has to be sound. And 75% of marketers are not confident on their tech stack.
Hmm.
In my opinion, if you're not confident in something, you need to obviously put a lot of time and effort into growing that to a point of confidence.
Right. Yeah. That's another way to look at. And also at the same time, let's talk about the role of CMO is changing too.
Yeah.
In today's world, it's becoming fractional. Sometimes
Oh, yeah.
growth officers and revenue officers are also overlapping the role of CMO in various processes because
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
cross team collaborations and pressure from the top. And there are a lot of same kind of activities are being duplicated between different departments in such a way. It's not wrong in some way that they cannot do those kind of things. They, as in like CRO or the growth officers, they're still okay.
Yeah.
But we don't promote that at all levels, and having this kind of a close collaboration at the top sets the precedence for rest of the company also to be cross functional collaborated
Yeah.
environment, right? Which is good and bad at the same time. What do you think, like how CMO role is evolving, like compared to 5 years ago versus today, and then in 2 years from now, where do you see CMO role is adjusting, and how they should rediscover their role?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's your take on it?
So let's talk about the CMO role 5 years ago. Back then, I was a CMO for it was a multinational company, importer distributor, and that was all about channel mastery and performance ops. That was what it was about. If you mastered your channel, you were doing a really great job. And 5 years later, right now, it's a completely different landscape. So much has changed in 5 years. Now we're looking at orchestration across CX, data, content, retail media. We're looking at a number of 73% of global ad spend in 2025 is going to be digital. So right now it's just that orchestration across CX channels and that customer experience, which is
Yeah, that's a big number.
sorry, that's a huge number. And, if that number doesn't scare you as a CMO, it should. It should keep you up at that. So that's how we've shifted from that channel mastery through to kind of that heavily CX focused ecosystem right now. If we to look ahead, the marketing landscape has changed so much in the past 6 months. The best way I could say is probably to look at first party data systems and finance grade forecasting, because I feel in a few years from now, marketeers are going to be able to do that. We're going to be able to hyper analyze markets and data with all of the MarTech tools that we have at our disposal. I think it's going to become clinical. I think it's going to be absolutely clinical where marketeers are heading to. And earlier on, we spoke about the space to make mistakes and to learn from those mistakes. I think in a few years' time, there's not going to be that much space to make mistakes because of the precision marketing that we're going to be deploying.
That is scary at the same time. I mean,
Right? I
uh,
mean, think
let
about it. Right now, our margins for error are still somewhat neither here nor there. But if we have a look at the level of accuracy and digital ops and our performance and what we're actually all of the information and data we're able to harvest right now. I've said to teams throughout my entire career, collect the data. You cannot improve what you cannot measure. And we've got so many
right.
data points right now that we can measure. And that ultimately helps us to avoid making certain mistakes. And we can learn a lot from that, right? Now let's fast forward 5 years into the future.
Mhm.
I think there I think there are going to be a lot of data points. And I think that margin of error is just going to move slower and slower and slower. And just as a side note, let's have a look at velocity. Velocity is accelerating at a rate of knots. So we have a look at how long it takes for a customer to select a product off a shelf in a grocery store. I mean, what would you think that amount of time is for that customer 5 years ago versus today?
I do see customer behavior is changing, expectations are changing, patience level is less.
Yeah,
Customers
yeah.
are more educated than ever, right?
Yep.
Data is available at hand. You ask generative AI a question. I want to buy a phone. I want to buy a car. I want to buy a house. I want to refinance my home. The research is right there in 5 minutes. You have like more than information that you needed. Okay, to
Well,
make to
you
make
you
this.
quite you quite right. 5 minutes is actually quite an accurate number. If you're in a grocery store and a consumer has to make a decision on a product, it's on average 4 minutes and 10 seconds in Canada. If we're looking at a device, you touched on a mobile device or an electronic device.
Exactly.
The old number was 36 days. The new stat is 21 days to make that decision on by that new tech. So the velocity of marketing is changing. So if we had a look at CMOs in 5 years' time, I think those timelines are also going to be shifting down and customers are going to be making more informed decisions quicker. And we really need to be reactive to that.
What are those some of key metrics that you suggest leaders should measure or target to measure success?
I think any relevant metric is a key metric. I think aggregating that data into a form where it serves well is very tricky.
How can then leaders motivate the organization, all of the people working, to build that kind of culture?
I think within an organization, now we're going from CX to EX. And I think that the employee experience is really important. And then I use that word that every marketeer hates: communication. Communication is so important. But we talk about the tools and giving the employees in the organization the right tools to do their thing. Hell, we need to communicate with them.
There is a lot of data points and connectivity between different data systems have to play a great role and very well orchestrated.
McKinsey or Gartner, which found 71% of customers expect personalized interactions, and 76% were frustrated when they didn't receive it. And that comes down to one thing when it comes to tech and marketers. You have to have a natural curiosity.
at several instances, like customers know more than the sellers themselves.
Yeah, yeah.
And the sales reps are not,
That's exactly right. They do the research.
and sales reps sometimes don't have enough or latest information. I called a customer rep of a business like a while ago. It was just an experiment. I wasn't doing a buying decision, but as a marketer myself, I just called some customer support because they just launched a product which we were going
What
against.
industry are we talking in here?
It was B2B, okay,
Okay, B2B, yeah.
and we were going against. I mean, that company was our number one rival at the time. Okay, and I, as a marketer, I just called their sales reps, customer support line, and asked about the what they launched today. How do they feel about it? Okay, but the person on the
Classic,
other,
classic CX
yeah,
gesture, yeah.
the person on the other side wasn't even aware that there was some launch happened today. Okay.
Ouch.
Yeah. So I mean, that
Communication,
yeah,
internal communication, and that touches on employee experience as well. I mean,
yeah.
that's phenomenal. Imagine how that employee felt like, oh goodness, this customer knows more than what I do on this. We'll get back to you.
Yeah. It was on the like homepage, a big announcement, and I called to learn more about it, and the person on the other side wasn't aware. So I mean, there are disconnection. I mean, and this is not
Crazy.
just, it is not just that one company. I'm sure I have seen that at several places, at several teams and organizations, and this is also a disconnect to the C-suite in such a way. I mean, that's
Yeah,
probably another
yeah,
reason those roles started to overlap with each other, like CGO,
yeah,
CFO, right? CEO, they all cross collaborating to set that
yeah.
processes for collaboration down below in the rest of the team. And yeah, companies should have to rediscover their organizational structures in that way. If at the
That's
top,
exactly right. And it comes down to communication, internal communication, how that information seeps down and filters down from the C-suite to the actual people on the ground who are selling the product or supporting the product. Absolutely, that is super important.
yeah, and as you mentioned, like data, and in 2 years, in 5 years from now, customers are today are very well educated. They want to make informed decision, educated decision, and in 5 years from now, they'll be even more, and there are less margins to error. How then marketing leaders should look at their marketing strategies today, and what changes need to happen in those strategies or strategies making thought process?
So that kind of sounds like a customer behavior tilt or like a customer behavior question. Let's have a look at Canada again as a
Mhm.
snapshot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Retail sales, we're looking from let's look at this from July to date, more or less. We're looking at retail sales fell 0.8%. Okay, from July, with early signs of a October rebound. So we've got a softness in the market right now. Now, as a marketer, you'd really have to hyper analyze this and look at how we can build a rebound based on that or build a rebound strategy based on that. If we have a look at customer mood, and this is just current affairs, the Bank of Canada survey showed weaker wage growth expectations and way more caution. So we're having a look at general consumer sentiments, and our strategies kind of have to, or kind of, they very much have to mimic what's happening at the moment. So when we have a look at that customer behavior and we start planning on how we're going to engage that, this is very dependent on your industry, like the motor vehicle industry, the auto industry. If you're in retail, it's a very different world to
Yeah,
wholesale at the
yeah.
moment. Wholesale is a mess, but
Really.
retail is booming. I suppose when we talk strategy, there's a cacophony of different industries that one would have to kind of very independently speak about. But I think that understanding the numbers and understanding the customer sentiment within your segment is really, really, really important. And I think that a lot of CMOs today
Hmm.
focus so much on a brand outward strategy than a let me pick up the phone and phone customer care and see if customer care can actually support the product that we launched today. Very similar to um, your experience earlier, and have a look at that brand on an inward type of strategy. And I think that's a rut that a lot of marketers get stuck in. We spoke about busyness earlier. We are busy. We are working on a million different products. We're working on a million different projects. We're looking at velocity. We're looking what was the stat you gave? 75% of marketeers are not happy with their tech stack.
29. Yeah.
79. So
Yeah.
we're looking at 79% of senior leaders, marketeers in their business that are not happy with their tech stack. They're focusing on that. There's so much happening here. But to
They,
remove yourself and look inward,
yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
that's interesting.
It wasn't like they were not happy. It was like they're not confident.
Confidence, yes, that's
Yeah.
the,
So they don't have
yeah,
clarity, like if their tech stack is at an optimal operational level or not, right? So
yeah.
again, like that gray area is scary. They need to be
And
confident.
there's just so much happening within that department. And to
Hmm.
remove yourself from all of that chaos and all of that movement and to position yourself outside your business and actually take that customer journey yourself.
Yeah,
It's very interesting as objectively.
there are a lot of dots to connect here, but it is also next to impossible to have all the ducks in line. But
Yeah.
what do you think? What matters more on the top line, and how the success should be measured in such a way, like not for just marketing, but for the whole business? What are those some of key metrics that you suggest leaders should measure or target to measure success?
I think any relevant metric is a key metric. I think aggregating that data into a form where it serves well is very tricky. I've worked with a lot of businesses and had a lot of customers that have a ton of data, but don't really know how to interpret it all that well. I mean, the data is, I would almost say, raw, and you've got to very carefully pick what type of data serves the business and what type of data actually serves um, building that brand. So if we have a look at the CLV, or we look at NPS, are we going to have a look at the churn rates? Are we going to instate a rewards program or a loyalty program or a retention program? How are we going to do this? What metrics are we looking at to move forward? And I had a briefing with the team not too long ago. This is an Apple Watch, and I say to the team, I would like to understand my customer the same way my watch understands me. It understands my heartbeat, where I go, when I go. It understands what route I take to work because it's connected to my GPS. It understands where I spend my money because I use Apple Pay. It understands everything about me. And ultimately, all of those metrics summed up, put together, that is what we should be striving for and how we should want to know our customers.
It's a good expectation, okay, but there is a lot of data points and connectivity between different data systems have to play a great role, and very well orchestrated tech stack is needed as well. And that's exactly where CMOs are not very confident, right? Their tech stack is doing the thing it's supposed to be doing. It could be doing, but they're not fully aware of that. Let's talk about that, like about the technology to meet that expectation you just described.
Yeah. Yeah.
What should happen? How employees and customers' data needs to be connected, where the gaps are, how because employees need to be equipped with the training, with the right tools to do all this. Okay.
Yeah.
How can companies do the gap analysis in order to fill those gaps and then get that level of optimum i- leadership experience, employee experience, and customer experience delivered? What about like top three things? I think if you wanna lead on this kind of gap analysis, like what would you look at those top three priorities?
Ah, gosh. I would probably go with personalization.
Yeah,
I'd go time to value, and I would probably go with channel mix. So I'd say those three
good ones.
things would probably be the first ones I go to. And I say those with a very
Good.
wide kind of hitting industry and sector kind of arrows. So if I had to shoot an arrow directly to it, I'd fall there first. Personalization, quite simply, because I think there was a McKinsey study. I think it was McKinsey or Gartner, which found 71% of customers expect personalized interactions, and 76% were frustrated when they didn't receive it.
Yes, I
So
think yeah, I have read that study. Yeah,
you've read that one?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah, absolutely,
we
absolutely.
have a look at we have a look at that alone, and it's as simple as personalization of communication. We have a look at the industries that do that so well, and the customer experience is so much better than just receiving an email, dear customer, versus dear Nav, dear Jared, or whatever the case is. I think that's really important in a tech stack. So look, I mean, we're talking just three of almost an infinite number of metrics that we should or Martech stack builds which we could aggregate all of that data with. If we have a look at time to value, I think there was a study that showed 79% um, of doctors see ROI within the 12 months of prioritizing their tech stack.
Hmm.
So it works. It definitely does work, but it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of understanding. And that comes down to one thing when it comes to tech and marketers. You have to have a natural curiosity. This is a hot a hot topic on this one.
That's the trait I'm learning these days. Like most of the leaders I'm talking to, they want these kind of intellectual skills more than the technology skills in whatever role they are hiring for.
Yeah.
You,
Oh
whether it's a
yeah.
technology role, leadership role, executive role, these skills are more required than ever before that I'm seeing.
Yeah. And it's that natural curiosity. What is this? What does this do? How can I make this work? Let me try and figure this out. Now, let me tell you something. The person that tries to figure it out and put the building blocks together and really kind of builds that structure in their heads and say, hey, well, that's cool. What if? Oh, that is so valuable in a department.
Yeah. Curious, sportsman, eager,
Yep.
and ready to take risks, and um comfortable to be in uncomfortable situations,
Yep.
and yeah, okay to be bad. Yeah, these kind of skills, or you can say talents, that leaders are looking for in addition to the role they are hiring for, not just experience, but have like
Yeah.
intellectual and cognitive skills too.
Yeah. And I'd add one word to your list is when you say curious, I'd say naturally curious.
Uh,
I listened to an interview with Mike Siekler, who's the CEO of Specialized Bicycles,
uh-huh.
an enthusiast, and he was talking about how he hires within his circle, and one of the most important things was that natural curiosity. Now, I listened to this interview years and years ago, and it's just been one thing that really stuck with me was this word naturally curious. The
Naturally.
internal need to take something, break it apart, and rebuild it again with the same parts. It just comes out completely different and somewhat more efficient. That natural curiosity, I genuinely believe, is invaluable.
Do you agree that executives' personal branding matters for the business growth?
You very quickly realize that your network is your network. That personal brand within that network, how incredibly important that is. When you need to build that brand up from the ground in a new territory, it's extremely difficult. You need to create that for yourself and be a trusted advisor on the board and a trusted leader for the team and a trusted brand for your customers. There's a lot of trust that goes into that personal brand.
Who would you hire as a CMO for your organization to success?
There are a lot of functional checkboxes, but then there is also two things that I think are incredibly important. And number one, at the top of my list, who would have guessed it? Natural curiosity, the number one thing I look for. I would say on the non-checkbox scale, I'd look for a very strong leadership. I think those three things are incredibly important. But then there are other things. There is, marketing mix modeling, and there is P&L literacy, and there are a lot of educational or functional things that one would have to look for.
People with a lot of experience, they grow on these over time, but young entrepreneurs and young executives are hard to find with these traits.
I'd be as bold as to say neglect. Are we having fun? And are we trying new things? And are we really having fun doing what we're doing? Because I think that also, that shows a lot in a brand and an ecosystem.
I think then you can hire me in that way. You're reminding me like when I was a kid, and those sports cars, the little Hot Wheels and other kind of.
Yeah.
I screw them off, check what's inside, and then try to break it down. And then it doesn't work. Then I open it again and fix it somehow without having any knowledge, just enough to get home, and then just fix it and make play with that again.
Ned, so how many
Naturally
lessons?
curious.
That's exactly it. Now, how many lessons can we learn
Yeah.
about marketing with what you've just said? That
Yeah.
natural curiosity of breaking a process, a structure, whatever, breaking it down and rebuilding it into something completely new. Will it work the first time? Maybe. Maybe you
Yeah.
absolutely nail it and it works. But sometimes you've really got to have it fail to understand where those weak points are and improve it. I
Yeah.
mean, that's something I find incredibly important. And also that curiosity somewhat fades when marketeers get blinkers on because they're so busy all the time and there's so many things that have to get checks off the checklist every single day that the amount of time you can spend creatively without those blinkers on is so limited. And I
Yes.
think that's something a lot of marketeers need to
Yes.
do a
And
bit of introspection on.
it's a right balance between doing the things right and do the right things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the right balance, and all leaders, yeah, not just leaders, but everyone in the organization should think about it. You don't have to do everything right; just do the right things.
Absolutely. And the space to be creative.
Absolutely. How can then leaders motivate the organization, all of the people working, to build that kind of culture, ready to take risk, and this is risky
So
without hurting customer experience? That's where.
don't micromanage. Okay. Some people do need to be micromanaged, but I think in general, who you hire, you need to be able to trust. I've had the privilege of working in really big organizations with a lot of free reign, actually with almost complete autonomy, where we're able to think out of the box and try new things and really be able to break down barriers and to practice that natural curiosity in a
uh,
very energetic, fun, groundbreaking way. But I think within an organization, now we're going from CX to EX. And I think that the employee experience is really important. I think that an organization that has happier employees is an organization that's going to thrive. And I think that you'll see that employee experience in the products, in the services. We spoke about that case study earlier where you called and that person had no idea what was on the company's banner. And now we're looking at employee enablement. And what I think a lot of marketers also sometimes don't think that much about is, as much as we're marketing outbound to get customers in, we also have a responsibility to market inbound to our
Yes.
own organization.
Yes.
We are not only selling the product externally, we genuinely got to sell that product internally as well. And for us to position our product or service in a way that our employees believe in us and believe in that, us, I speak about the entire organization as a whole. I think that's super important. And I think two things come into play. I think knowledge and the right type of tools.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think those two things. And then I use that word that every marketer hates: communication, internal communication. Have you ever been to a status meeting where that hasn't come up? We need better communication, guys. We need better communication.
Yeah.
I
Precisely.
want to I want to bash my face against a table. Yes, communication is so important, but we talk about the tools and giving the employees in the organization the right tools to do their thing. Hell, we need to communicate with them, right?
Yeah, and okay to fail kind of
Yeah,
enablement culture.
that's
Um,
exactly right. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
But
okay.
but again, there are certain positions and there are certain roles where you really need to do things systematically, and those positions sometimes require a lot less creativity. But also, I think those organizations really need to they kind of need to brand build internally to externally. I think that that's really important.
Correct. You're touching brand right now, like communication. I would like to talk about, like, of course, we touched that initially also, brand perception, building branding, spreading awareness. That's the key area of any marketer, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not just the business, but I would rather say like personal branding is important too, inside and outside the organization.
Yeah.
Especially like when social media is so active, all the celebrities are accessible, sportsmen
Yeah.
are accessible, business executives are accessible. Do you agree that executives' personal branding matters for the business growth?
Yeah. 100% I do. Um, and I'll use myself as a case study here. 3 years ago, what is the date? Yeah, almost exactly 3 years ago, to the day, I immigrated from South Africa to Toronto, Canada. And you realize when you immigrate and you start fresh in a brand new place where you have no friends or family, you're all unfamiliar with the place and whatnot, you very quickly realize that your network is your net worth.
And
And that personal brand within that network, how incredibly important that is. When you need to build that brand up from the ground in a new territory, it's extremely difficult. And that personal brand is, I would almost say, it's invaluable. I started a business about, gosh, what are we on? Probably a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. And that personal brand as a marketeer shines brighter than ever when you do, or it needs to shine brighter than ever while you're doing that. You need to be a thought leader. You need to be somebody who's outspoken. That's one thing marketers are very good at, is speaking and
mm,
selling ideas,
yes,
not only to a customer, but also to shareholders and a board and a CEO and a CFO. Hell, the amount of times I've called the CEO and said, "Hey, crazy time of night. Hey, I need $1 million tomorrow morning, quick." And you're constantly selling ideas. And I think that's super important when it comes to that personal brand. You need to be a thought leader. You need to be outspoken. You need to create that, almost want to say, persona, the same way you'd create a brand persona for the brands that you run. You need to create that for yourself and be a
Yeah.
trusted advisor on the board and a trusted leader for the team and a trusted brand for your customers. It's a lot of trust that goes into that personal brand.
Yeah, I agree with you. Your personal brand have that influence when you say something, right? You're not just
Absolutely.
an unknown person. You're coming with your own reputation, not just the business reputation you're representing, but you have your own reputation on top of that to add weightage on whatever you're
Oh,
speaking.
yeah.
It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
just something that you speak in silo. You have a community who is listening to you,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's
right?
exactly right. And your community or your tribe could be your whole organization. It could be a network of leaders. Like, for example, the CMO Council. CMO Council is probably one of the best platforms in the world when it comes to that. And
Yes.
creating that network of thought leaders and thought-provoking conversations. I've been an active member of the CMO Council for years and years now, and it's probably one of the best platforms to build that personal brand and network with like-minded individuals within industry. I think the council now has 18,000 members and is a huge organization. It's a huge association, and it's a privilege to be a part of.
Definitely, and I feel the same way. I mean, it's CMO Council who introduced us, and we are talking today. Otherwise, like I don't
That's
know
exactly right.
how
Yeah.
else I could have got in touch with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see any other reason I could have met you otherwise. Right? CMO
Yeah.
Council is connecting a lot of like-minded people, as you say, like good leaders who care about branding, who care about growth, who care about collaboration and mutual success.
Collaboration is such an incredible word. And there have been so many times where I've reached out to a fellow council member, somebody who I've seen do really great things, a CMO of a completely different product in a different industry. But it's so easy to reach out and say, hey, I'm launching my product into this territory. What are your thoughts on that? And we'll dive down and talk about all of these things. Have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? Blah blah blah. And ultimately, it's building the success of that launch through collaboration
Yep.
out of industry, out of but it's that connection and that brand and that entire thing. Especially shout out to CMO Council, fantastic. Secondly, it's really important to have that community, especially of marketeers, and to be able to have that brand within that type of association.
Okay. Uh, I would like to ask you for your hiring preference, Jared, and then we'll wrap up. You want to hire a CMO, let's say, and you want to rely on that person without you being intervening into the marketing efforts. Who would you look for today in today's world when, like, there are a lot of, as we touched about, marketing shift, customer behavior changing, lot of data points, and near future, less margin of errors. Who would you hire as a CMO for your organization to success?
I've done this before. When I've made the move from South Africa to Canada, I've actually done this before. There are a lot of functional checkboxes that need to be checked off, and this is things like education and fluency in tech and all of that type of thing. But then there is also two things that I think are incredibly important. And number one, at the top of my list, Nev, who would have guessed it? Natural curiosity. That is the person who's so naturally curious to dive in and get their hands dirty. I think that's the number one thing I look for. Um, my dad, who is an entrepreneur, hires for passion because he can teach skill. We've all heard this one a million times, but it's genuinely true. So I would say on the non-checkbox scale, it would be passion, natural curiosity, and I'd look for leadership. I'd look for a very strong leadership base who's able to mobilize the troops and get everybody on the same team and really create that one voice strategy, because that person we were talking about influence earlier, that's the person that will create influence within the organization, which will boost an employee experience, that will give the entire company the right tools to be able to perform. And I think those three things are incredibly important. But then there are other things. There is, goodness, marketing mix modeling, and there is P&L literacy, and there are a lot of educational or functional things that one would have to look for. But when it comes to personally, when I choose, let's say we've got a top five, it's that natural curiosity, that leadership skill, and it's going to be that voice that stands out.
Yep. And these are the skills actually not easy to find either. I mean, people with lot of experience, they grow on these over time, but young entrepreneurs and young executives are hard to find with these traits.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And experience is important. It is. It really, really, really is important. I mean, the years that you've notched is just, it's so incredibly valuable. I mean, the marketeer I was 6 years ago versus who I am today is a very, very different person. I mean,
Hmm.
and I think that experience is vital as well. I think it deserves special mention.
Yeah,
Um, Cross industry experience is sometimes quite an interesting one, I suppose, as long as they translate. But I
absolutely.
think I think that those things are the key things. And again, we can talk about a whole bunch of checklist style metrics that have got to be checked off. Like a CMO position is a very demanding. I think the first question we should all ask is, how much do you value sleep? And we'll take it from there.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, that's on when I'm looking at those final 3 or 5 candidates. I'm really looking at that natural curiosity, and also the capacity to have fun. I
You're right.
think that's one thing that a lot of people, I would almost say, neglect. I'd be as bold as to say
Yeah,
neglect
yeah, yeah.
is, are we having fun? And
Right.
are we trying new things? And are we really having fun doing what we're doing? Because I think that also, that shows a lot in a brand and an ecosystem.
Yes, yes. Yeah. Great insight, Jared. Thank you very much for sharing your details and sharing your experience. I'm sure our audience will learn a lot from you today. Thank you very much.
Nav, it's been so much fun. It's always a pleasure chatting to you, man.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much for hanging out with us. I truly appreciate your time and attention. If something in this episode sparked a new idea, shifted your thinking, or even just made you nod along, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We are just getting started. We might have made mistakes. I promise we will improve. In every episode, I'm going to dive deeper into such conversations that impact us. And hey, if you're vibing with what we are building here, share it with someone you trust. That's how good ideas spread. Until next time, think holistic, think economics, think fast, and keep leading forward.